Hello, welcome to the MeetRX Success Story Podcast. I'm Tracy, your host, and I'm here today with a really sweet lady, Lark. How are you, Lark?
I'm fantastic. Thanks, Tracy.
Awesome. Thank you for coming to share your journey with us. And can you begin by telling me what was your life like, your health conditions, and the foods that you ate prior to coming to carnivore?
Sure, happy to. Well, look, I was keto for low carb for about 3.5, 4 years before I went carnivore. But if I maybe start at the SAD diet, which was before that. So because I changed my diet about 8 years ago. So initially, it was just the standard Australian diet, SAD standing for Australian for us. And it was what was considered a fairly normal, almost healthy diet. Like I had grains and I had limited meat because we were told, to kind of limit red meat. But I grew up with meat, veg, cereals, breads, pasta, the usual thing, the occasional treats, all of that, just keep it in moderation. And so that was really what I was eating until I changed my diet when I was in my, 2012, 50s, in my 50s. So basically most of my life up until my 50s, I was eating that kind of standard food. And the interesting thing is at the time I had the usual kind of complaints. So I didn't have any huge illnesses, but I just had a whole host of symptoms that I wrote down. Thankfully, I wrote them down before I changed my diet even to low carb, because I think you forget what you put up with. And it just seemed normal. So as a kid, I had seasonal allergies, I got chilblains, I'd get colds and flu regularly. As I got older, that list just added to, I had, in fact, I'll have to look because it's so hard to remember these things. I started to get aching joints, the start of swollen joints in my finger and sore wrist joint and back joint and things like this. I got chronic bronchitis for 3 or 4 years in the winter in my 40s. I always had weak breaking nails. I used to bite my nails. I had a lot of anxiety. I had dandruff, I got hives, but again, nothing that was too drastic. It was just I would get these things and then they would pass, or I'd take antibiotics or whatever. So it seemed fairly normal, but I was taking a lot of sugar in. I've always been a lover of sweet things and chocolate. And again, that was just a normal part of the Australian diet, like in most Western countries, probably. So that's really what I was eating on the SAD diet. And then I decided to give up sugar for a month and I felt fantastic. I felt fantastic within 2 or 3 days. Like I had really extreme tiredness at the time and I thought, maybe I'm gluten intolerant or something like that, pre-diabetic even. And I gave up sugar and I felt fantastic. So that was kind of the start of my low carb journey, the start of my 50s. So I'm 61 now. So after doing that for 3 months, I lost all of the excess weight that I put on. I had suffered with depression. I was in deep grief because I'd lost my partner and my father and my stepdad within a short period. And it was really tough. And I also kind of stepped away from my real job, my academic job, and I started a chocolate business, which is kind of like owning a pub and being an alcoholic when you're a chocoholic. And so I was really overdoing the sugars. I was really using that as my comfort food, as I always had. But I started to get the repercussions of that. So I gained a lot of weight, not a huge amount, but it was still a lot of weight. I ended up losing that in 9 weeks when I cut sugar out of my diet. So it was 15 kilos, which is 33 pounds, and it just fell off me. And I felt fantastic. And I'm like, oh, great. Now what do I do? Because I was running a chocolate business. I was a chocolatier. I was making chocolate, sending them around Australia. I was teaching chocolate making. I set up a B&B, bed and breakfast, and I'd make sourdough bread for the guests and these homemade chocolates. And that was my life. So that was really the turning point for me at 52 to give up sugar. I was still having high carbs initially and just felt so good. It's like, okay, that was the start.
Wow, that's amazing. And chocolate, everybody loves chocolate. I think that's standard in many, many countries. And yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, I tried for decades to give it up. I really tried to moderate. That was the whole message that we were given, was just it's okay, but just don't have too much. So I always felt like I was just weak or hopeless not to be able to control it. And I tried for decades to just kind of limit the amount of sugar and chocolate that I took in. And it was just hopeless, just painful. So low carb really helped with that because it certainly reduced my carbohydrates and therefore my sugar intake. However, alternate sweeteners are kind of a thing in keto and all of those alternate foods. So after I initially gave up sugar, I then for about 18 months explored all of the alternate sweeteners. And I tried to continue my business by establishing a niche market, which was fructose-free chocolates. So it was using glucose instead of normal sugar. And I did establish a nice little spot in the market where people came to me for that kind of product. But then, of course, I started to gain a little bit of weight, started to get more of the depression back again, and started to look into it and came across Professor Tim Noakes, one of his lectures. And I just went low carb the next day. I just went, that's it, cutting all the carbs, felt fantastic again. But then over that 3-4 years of keto, by the end of it, I was very dirty keto. You know, I was taking a lot of alternate sweeteners, making a lot of things with nut flours, nut products, that kind of thing, fake chocolate. Like I say fake chocolate because I know what the real stuff is, but, you know, sweetened with xylitol or erythritol or whatever. So I kind of fooled myself that I was sugar-free in those years of keto, but it wasn't until I hit carnivore that I realized, oh my goodness, I'm still addicted to chocolate. I'm still addicted to sugar.
Yeah, those are hard. The artificial sweeteners, there's zero carb, but yeah, they still make your body want sugar, I think, but it's a slippery slope.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, how did you find out about the carnivore diet then?
I've always loved delving into the science. I need to understand what I'm doing, why I'm doing something to do it. And so I really did go in deep with low carb. And then on many of the podcasts I was listening to on low carb keto, they were starting to interview carnivore people. So it may have been Shawn even on Joe Rogan. I remember I saw that fairly early in the day, but there were also people on just the regular keto podcasts. And so that piqued my interest and I looked at that. And the reason I switched to carnivore from keto, because I always loved keto. I thought keto was really easy, like it's fairly sociable. What's hard about just, you know, going out and eating low carb? To me, that was really easy. But I went to carnivore for probably a reason that's now the least important of the things that I focus on in my health, which is interesting. And that's that I discovered 10, 20 years ago that my bones were fairly weak and there might be a genetic component. I think it's more likely my diet, that just all of the phytonutrients in all the things I was eating were leaching the minerals from my bones. I've always had a really active lifestyle. So anyway, my bone health was still declining and I thought, well, I need to do more. Obviously keto isn't enough because that's still getting worse. And I must have heard on one of the podcasts and talk about the importance of protein and building muscle and also generating bone. And I thought, okay, I'll go carnivore. I'll do it for, I think I planned to do it for 6 months and then slowly reintroduce keto foods and see what sort of sat right with me. So I did that. That was 2.5 years ago. And of course, that was before MeetRX, unfortunately for me, because I had no support. Nobody else in my life was doing it. And so after 6 months, I went 100% for 6 months. And in that 6 months, things improved so much. So my joint pain disappeared within 2 or 3 weeks of cutting out all the vegetables and the keto, going from keto to carnivore. Depression lifted. I developed a chronically itchy back the last 2 years of keto that drove me crazy. That improved by about 90% within weeks. And then it took a bit longer for it to completely disappear, maybe a year, completely resolve.
Do you know what that was? Do you know what caused the
It was
itching?
diagnosed as kind of a secondary dermatitis that was a result of some other funny name of something. I think it was, I don't know if it's oxalates,
Mhm.
you know, because I was eating a lot of nuts and nut flowers and
Yeah,
things.
I hear
Yeah.
that sometimes, yeah, that it causes itching. Mhm.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, I just went to a dermatologist. They said, look, it wasn't bad enough to take steroid cream or anything crazy like that. So I just put up with it. I had back scratches all over the house, in my car, beside my bed. It was just crazy. So I was really amazed that that went. My allergies had got really bad just before I went carnivore. I moved on to this farm property, and the long grass was cut, sort of hay length, I suppose, and I had an anaphylactic reaction to it. I just, my throat closed over, and within hours, I was to the point where I knew it was going to be difficult to keep breathing. So I took myself to the emergency room, and I thought, oh, great. So I'm allergic to the farm I've just bought, you know, terrific. And so again, I think I heard about allergies being something that carnivores had improved. So I thought, you know, definitely in. So it was really bones and allergies that I came to it, and they resolved. Well, the bone health is a longer term issue, but the allergy certainly disappeared as well. My nails grew stronger. I lost, you know, some weight. My body composition improved. I immediately got heaps stronger at the gym. Just lots of positives. Yeah.
That sounds great. So, did you have any transitional issues when you went to keto or when you went to carnivore?
So surprisingly, I did, because I really didn't expect it. Coming from keto, I thought I was pretty good, you know, compared to the standard diet. It was a big change from my past diet, and yet. So carnivore, I didn't have tummy upset. I could always tolerate the meat and the fat and everything like that. So I didn't have that kind of transitional problem. But once I slipped off carnivore after the first 6 months, and I started to reintroduce keto foods, and that was an absolute fast, slippery slope slide back face first back into sugar and chocolate. So I really struggled that second sort of from first 6 months was clean. The next year was struggle. And I was carnivore. I hadn't given up on carnivore. I never ate traditional carbs. I always joke that I was 90% carnivore and 10% sugar and chocolate, because when I would fall off, it was just into sugar and chocolate, but that's terrible, was terrible for me. So I really struggled that next year until I got to the point at the end of that 18 months that I was completely re-addicted to full-on sugar and chocolate, not even the alternate sweeteners. And that's when I joined MeetRX, a year ago. And so then it kind of felt harder to come back to 100% carnivore. And I think I've heard other people talk about that. And it's kind of a warning thing for people if you kind of think, oh, it's not too bad, you can always come back to carnivore. It was a real struggle the second time, much more than the first time. And so I tried different things. I tried increasing my fat. I tried increasing my protein. I tried intermittent fasting a little bit longer, because I've done a fair bit of extended fasting back in the day. And I really was struggling. I tried the meat salt water, and I felt so crook with that. I just didn't sit with me well. I realize now my meat was way too lean. It's taken me until now, would you believe, to figure out that even the fatty cuts that I thought I was buying are really super well trimmed before they got sent to me. So I can't believe it's taken me this long to figure out my meat supply, but I've figured that out now. So I think it was just eating too lean. So the protein was just probably too much for me back then. And then a lot of last year, I really struggled to keep on board. I'd lapse back into sugar and chocolate every couple of weeks maybe. And it would generally be for one meal. I don't call it a meal, but, you know, I'd do it once. I'd buy 4 or 5 bits of chocolates or lollies or something. And then the very next meal, I'd be back carnivore. But I kept doing that every kind of few days, weeks, whatever. And why I felt ready to do this interview with you today is that I've been feeling absolutely fantastic, completely buried the sugar addiction about 4 or 5 months ago. And it just happened. So I've been plugging away, never giving up, always coming back, noticing that my drops back into sugar were probably less deep each time. So I was kind of consuming a little bit less than I would have back in the day, and I'd get back quicker than I used to. And that was kind of a notion, that was my progress. But that still was really frustrating because I've been fighting this for so long. And then about 5 months ago, I had my last kind of binge on chocolate and sugar. And a few days later, I just went, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. And I wish I could say what it was that I came to that, point. It's happened to me before in life when I, was suffering with grief. And after about 8 years, I can remember the same feeling that I just, one night, I just went, you know what? That's over. I've done that. Let's move on. Had enough. And somehow I just knew that, and I just put it aside. I haven't touched it, haven't felt very tempted to, maybe occasionally, just because it's still hardwired that if my energy goes a little low, if I get a bit sad, whatever, that was always my route to feeling better. But I really have no cravings at all. And I got that carnivore zen. I got fabulous energy. I'm happy. Absolutely no anxiety, depression for months and months. And then, yes, I've fallen in love with a carnivore. And that's not the reason for my happiness, as I kind of keep saying. It's added to my happiness. But to me, that's a real sign of my healing as well, because I had totally written that off. For 14 years, I just went, that's it, not going to happen, not looking for it, not interested, not wanting it. And clearly I've healed to the extent emotionally in that regard that I'm willing to kind of be vulnerable, actually consider, not even consider it, just in boots and all. So that is just an amazing thing for me as well. And like I said, I think it's part of that whole health journey. And I didn't think I needed to tackle that one. I was quite happy with my lifestyle. I thought sugar was kind of my last big battle. But now it seems that, even other miraculous things can happen when you're a carnivore.
Right, right. That's so exciting to hear about, because it's just a life-changing thing. And carnivore, it's a journey. I mean, even if you think you're carnivore and that's the end of it, that's what I'm going to do, but it changes along the way sometimes over the years like that. Can you tell me, Lark, what kind of foods do you eat in a day? How much do you eat? Everybody likes to know that sort of thing.
Sure. So I've done lots of different ways. I tend to like variety because I'm a real foodie. I tend to like, interesting ways of preparing carnivore foods and a variety. So my diet will include almost everything carnivore, mostly ruminant meat, which is either beef or lamb in Australia, is beautiful. The only chicken would be chicken wings because they're kind of fatty enough with the skin on that I can enjoy those occasionally. Occasionally pork, as in pork belly, fish, eggs. I do love eggs. I tried cutting them out just because I had a food tolerance test that came back that said whites in particular are inflammatory for me. So I really have just the occasional whole egg, but I have lots of egg yolk. And I love that. I really missed that when I stopped it. I have done dairy up until a couple of months ago. I cut it out in January, and I've cut out almost all dairy this month as well. And the advantage, I can tolerate dairy okay, or I feel I can, but I do gain a little bit of weight with it, and it's addictive to me. I can overeat it. And so for that reason, I've cut cream out of my diet again. I still consider butter okay, but I probably rely more on the animal fats. Like everything, anchovies, bacon, every carnivore food. I even got, what were those crazy fish things? Ume, what were they called? Sea urchin. I even tried sea urchin. Like, this is crazy. Yeah. So these spiky black kind of strange things. So I'm willing to try almost any animal food, but the basis of my diet would be definitely beef and lamb, and probably eggs are fairly major in it, but egg yolks only. In terms of how often I eat, again, that sort of shifts around a little bit. I generally would do 1 to 2 meals a day. I'm tending now because it's like 2.5 years carnivore, I'm certainly eating less than I needed in the early days, less often. I'll fast for longer. My first meal would generally be 2 p.m. or if it's one meal a day, I might just have one bigger meal at 4 p.m. In terms of the amount of meat, I kind of try and aim for, or keep in my head, I just eat when I'm hungry. So I wait and eat when I'm hungry and I stop when I'm full. But I suppose 500 grams, what's that? 450 grams, half a pound. Does that sound right?
Mhm.
I'm trying to work out the conversion. 2.2 pounds to a kilogram. Yeah, so 2.2 pounds to 2. What is it? Anyway, it's 450 grams. What's that? I can't remember. I think that's a pound. Yeah, that's about a pound of meat. Yeah.
So you eat a pound of meat per day. Is that what you mean?
I think so, yeah.
And you
But I'm
divide it up.
yeah, sorry? What did you say?
Divide it up like maybe 1 or 2 meals or?
Sure, but again, I don't measure my food in that regard. It's just that I have tracked in the past to get an idea of my macros and how much fat to protein I'm eating. I've tried to push that at times where I went 2 to 1 fat to protein, and yeah, I'm back to now just more intuitive eating. I think I just I'll add some fat trimmings if I feel like I need it. I'll have really fatty eggs, like egg yolks with extra butter, and make a beautiful scramble out of that. So eating is just, the thing, Tracy, eating has just kind of melted into the background of my life. It's not something I have to struggle with. It's not something I think about. It's not something I spend hours over, as much as I am still a foodie and I'll do some sous videing and I'll do different ways of preparing food. It's so quick and easy. And as Coach Raymond told me months ago when I was struggling and I was in the weeds of carnivore and I was kind of focusing too much on the minutiae of, fat or protein or hours or fasting, he just said, hey, go live life, and that's what I do now. I just, I feel great. So I go and work on the farm and I don't notice until I'm really hungry. I come in, I'll eat something, cook something, eat something. It's quick and easy. And that's what but to me, that's the carnivore zen. Like a lot of people go really mellow. I don't know if I'm mellow. I'm happy. But it's more for me that it's just not, it's not a thing anymore. I don't have to fight it, which after all of these decades is the biggest relief and win for me with carnivore for sure. And that's where I wanted to get to before I even owned up to any success in carnivore, because to me, that was my biggest challenge. It was obviously affecting my health and my mental health more than anything. So to be able to sit here and say that I'm at that place, and that's not to say that I take it for granted at all, because I know how easily I could slip off if I eat anything. So for me, I'm an abstainer. I only discovered that a few years ago, that actually I can't moderate. Maybe I've heard some people say, look, the sort of foods that we're trying to control are almost impossible for most humans anyway, because they're just so hyperpalatable. But I think if you've overdone sugar and chocolate in the past, I feel very much more sensitive to that. I kind of wish I hadn't done it, because it'd be nice to say, oh, occasionally maybe I could survive it. But I just kind of know for myself, maybe in 5 years carnivore, who knows? If I was in France and I wanted to, or wherever, somewhere special and you wanted to try something. But to be honest, it's not worth it, because I feel so fantastic. I'm in my best health ever. I'm in the best place that I've ever been in my life. So there's no interest to kind of change that, or to really do anything much more than play with a little bit of extra fasting or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I'm so happy for you, all the things that you have healed and everything. I was going to ask you, how did MeetRX play into your situation? And can you tell me the benefits of being a member of MeetRX?
Other than falling in love with another MeetRX carnivore, got to thank MeetRX for that. Beyond that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year, so I joined February last year, and it was my social lifesaver through lockdown. Here in Australia, we were locked down for kind of 9 months. So not only was I learning things about carnivore and had a forum to get advice about things that I was, having trouble with, it really was a lifesaver in terms of like-minded people, you know, people who are readers, who are interested in the science, who are experimenting, who are curing themselves. I just love that attitude. You know, I've never been one to kind of just hand over responsibility to other people for the difficulties I was having. I always looked to myself, probably too much so, in that I would beat myself up when I wasn't doing well. And I had a real perfectionist personality, so I had to kind of learn to temper that. So MeetRX gave me just so much support and so many wonderful coaches like you, and I could rattle off so many others, and I won't because I'll leave people out. And I love Shawn. I mean, what a fabulous role model he is for all of us, that he's such a, you know, a smart guy, and he's, you know, he's not, what do I want to say? He's not radical. Like, he's like, eat what you can eat. Like, so that attitude I've really loved. And I suppose I've hung in now in MeetRX. I kind of feel like I don't need it as much as I did. I really desperately needed it last year. I'm in a place now, I feel fantastic, but I kind of want to give back to the community and stick around, and also just be kind of for those people who were like me, to say it's actually possible, and it might take you some time, just hang in there. Like for me, that whole carnivore zen and getting off sugar, it took 2 years. You know, that seems, some success stories, you see people lose weight instantly and get healthy instantly. And I did in lots of ways, but my big challenge, it took longer than that. So I'm very thankful for MeetRX, and I really appreciate you inviting me on to have a chance to tell my story. And I support MeetRX as much as I can, because it truly changes people's lives, and it's helped change my life for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And I know that you are a valued person to the community, and everyone loves you. I know it's been always great to see you in meetings and everything. So I appreciate you giving us an interview too, and letting people know how you've healed and your journey. And I know everyone loves watching these success stories because it's inspiring and helpful.
Yeah, and it's inspiring for me, and it kind of keeps us going. We've got this world community of carnivores, even if there aren't carnivores in our space,
Mm-hmm.
which for me, you know, is the same. I know a small number of carnivores in my hometown, but we don't really get together very much. So yeah, it's really lovely to be part of this, and I think the word is getting out, and I think that these success stories are a great way to do it, because it's kind of grassroots. You hear about other people, and if you come to the end of your tether with medical advice, then what have you got to lose? Just do this for a month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is. I mean, you've got nothing to lose. In fact, when I talked to my doctor, who was a low carb doctor, I was a little embarrassed about saying, oops, I've actually gone completely like 100% meat. Do you know what he said? He said, you couldn't do anything better for your bones. And I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Awesome.
Tracy, I appreciate your time and appreciate everything you do as well.
Oh, thank you, Lark. You're in Australia, so you're just kind of beginning your day, and I'm ending mine, but I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, and you too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.